Okay, welcome to the video for center movement. Centered movement being one of the 5 principles. Think of your center as pretty much your center of gravity. So that would be, for example, if I was to sort of lean over a gate and balance myself over a gate, the point that I would naturally find myself balancing would be my center of gravity. And it's around the navel, maybe a little bit below. But if you think of it as your center of gravity, the middle of your body, that's what we're kind of looking for this kind of level. We're looking at physical skill, coordination, and to be more effortless and effective. And to do that by coordinating the movements from the center and moving everything from the center, we can be more efficient and effective in those movements. So there are 3 ways you can move the center. The first is by rotating the pelvis. So I can show you simply here. If I stand with my feet shoulder width, sat into the quad. If I open and close the quad, I'll rotate my pelvis. If I put my finger on my center as I do that, you can see that my center is moving as I do that. So that's number 1, rotating the pelvis. Number 2, shifting the weight. So I place my finger again on the center, and here I can just shift my weight from side to side. And you can get the sense here, you can see my center moving. That can also happen wherever I place my feet. If I'm shifting the weight back and forth between the feet, then you can see my center is moving. I shift back, my center moves. Okay. And then finally, if I take a step anywhere, so if I take a step out to the side, my weight shifts. If I take a step forward, my center moves. Okay, so anywhere I take a step will also move the center. So it's those 3 ways, or any combination of those 3. So I could be taking a step and shifting the weight. I could be shifting the weight and rotating the pelvis. Okay. So any combination of those 3, shift the weight, rotate the pelvis, take a step, is how we move the center. And what we want to do then is to tie in the rest of the body, if you like, to make sure that we're moving everything from the center. So I'm not stepping with my leg and leaving my center behind. I'm not moving my arm and my center's not moving. You see, everything I do comes from this point. Okay. So we've got a few distinctions that we can make in center movement. Initially, we'll tie it in for the arms and hands, so hopefully you can understand a little bit better. So I'll do my best to explain it as clearly as I can. I did cover this in an email a few weeks ago, I think, but hopefully this will make more sense than reading it. So the first distinction we want to make is the one I've just done, which we don't really want to do, but you do need to be aware of this to know that you're not doing it. And that's when I move my center in one direction, but I move my hand in another. Okay, and it creates this kind of discord within the body. If I move my center this way, like so, I rotate my pelvis this way, but then I move my hand another way. See, it kind of breaks the body up a little bit. So it ruins the integrity of my structure. My body's being split in different directions. It's center one way, hand another way, and it's creating this little break. So we want to be aware of that just to make sure that we're not doing it. Okay. Now then, distinction number 2 is where we move the center. So say I rotate my pelvis, you see, and I shift my weight. And initially, I miss my hand. See, my hand stays there. If I put my finger on my center and I move, you can see my center's moving, but there's nothing here. But if I keep moving, you see my hand now gets dragged into the movement. Because it's attached to the body, it kind of gets dragged in by default. So I move it this way. Initially, my center misses the hand, and then as I keep moving and shifting, it gets dragged in. So there's a time lag between me moving my center and the hand moving. Okay. Which can look nice, but it's not really what we're after just yet. Okay. So center moves, and eventually, if I keep going, the hand kind of gets dragged in by default. So that's distinction number 2. Again, it's not quite what we're after, but something to be aware of. Distinction number 3 is where we try and eliminate the time lag so that the hand and the center move at the same time. So if I keep my hand resting out here and I turn my center, my hand moves at the same time as the center. So if you like, this is the inside of the record and this is the outside of the record, and as the inside of the record revolves, the outside revolves too. Okay, so that's distinction number 3. So it doesn't matter where my hands are, I rotate my center, you see, or I shift my weight, moving my center, or I take a step, shift the weight, rotate the pelvis, and everything follows this. Now I can still do that while dropping my hand and rotating my pelvis, or I can lift my hand while rotating my pelvis. And there are other connections for that, which I'll go into a little bit in a short while. Okay, but mainly we don't want that time lag. We want hand and center to move together. So you can put your arm into any position from the Tai Chi set. Even if I pretend I'm going to pick the kettle up, so I set myself up and I turn and I reach for the kettle, but it's all coming from this area. You see, the shifting, the turning and the reaching is all coming from this point. Okay. So we're getting there. It's very, very close. So what we want now is distinction number 4, is that rather than the hands and center just moving at the same time, we actually cycle the center around and into the hands. Remember, we're just using the hands as an example for a moment. So if, for example, I turn and my hand and center move together, that's great. We've got no time lag. They're matching up. But if there was someone, for example, standing in front of me and I turned my center and my hand catches on their shoulder, you see, now my hand is going to stop, but my center will keep going and leave my hand behind. And now I've broken that connection again. See? So the person standing here has sort of interfered a little bit. Hand and center move together. I catch his shoulder, and then my hand stops, but my center keeps going, and it creates that break. So to deal with that, rather than have the center moving this way, okay, and the hand moving this way, I cycle my center from here up through the arm and into the hand. So I cycle it around and into the hand. And in that way, I can actually direct my mass into the person or object that's standing here and take them with me, okay, by using my whole body movement and cycling the center around and into the hand. Hopefully that makes some sense. That would also work as well if I was, say, hooking something, you see, and rather than me turn my center and leave the hand because of the weight on the end of it, if I pull my center out of my hand, then I can tie everything in together and pull whatever the object, person is, along with me. So then it's kind of squeezing the center into the hand or drawing the center out of the hand so that we maintain that connection into this point. And that's the fundamentals of the center movement. You've got the 3 ways to move the center, which rotate the pelvis, shift the weight, take a step, or any combination of those 3. And then the 4 distinctions. Number 1, moving the arms and center in different directions. Number 2, you've got the time lag. Number 3, there's no time lag. Number 4, there's cycling the center into and out of the limbs. Okay. To go along with that, there are a couple of other things we can do to help with tying the body into this point. And one of the best ones, okay, for now, is to connect the hip and the elbow. Okay. So when I'm doing the Tai Chi set, for example, and I'm coming in to want to lift this, okay, if I connect my hip and elbow, I can use my hip as I rotate my pelvis to push my elbow up. So I can come in behind the elbow with my hip, and if there was a stick there, I would turn my hip and that would push the stick, which would push my elbow, which would lift my arm up. Okay. And that helps keep this center movement propelling the arms through space. When we do the first move of the Tai Chi set and we turn and grab the ball, if I do that from the side, if I can connect my hip to my elbow, so remember, if my hip is moving, this is because I'm rotating my pelvis. Okay? So I'm going to rotate my pelvis this way. And as I do that, as my hip moves, it drags my elbow up. Okay? So I get hip and elbow working together. When I'm stepping forward, this hip is squeezing the elbow. You may have heard me mention this in the classes. Is that hip and elbow connection. See, as I rotate the hip, I fold the hip and I'm folding at the elbow as well. But I'm feeling as if this is driving this. Okay? So the center movement is, when related to the arms, is like your center turns and moves and it propels your hands and arms through space. You see? So it's always coming from this point. And what I'm doing now is just allowing my hand and arm to follow the center. So whatever energy is being generated by the center movement, see, I can allow my hands and arm to follow that. Okay. And that is really the basis of all our center movement and how we guide everything through the set. Beginning here, we allow this to direct the movements of the body. And rather than me doing something with my arms, I give up my arms and allow them to be subservient to my center. So that whatever I'm doing with my center, my arms and hands in this case are responding. It may also be your legs if you're stepping and moving around. But it's this bit that does much of the work. Okay, so you can see here as I'm turning, my hip is moving, my elbow is coming up. Maybe that's what I wanted to do. If I am here, I come out. Center moves, squeezes into the arms. center moves and fades away. Okay, so it takes a little bit of practice, a little bit of getting used to, but you can split down the movements and say, okay, I'm doing this in the beginning of the set when we grab the ball. So how do I get this movement of rotating my pelvis, shift the weight, rotate, how does that draw this arm up rather than me turn and just lift the arm? So I want to feel that my arm is directed by this point. Okay. So I give up all thoughts of moving the arm and allow the arm to follow the energy generated by the center. As if I turn and do this, and see that my arm is moving on the turn. But how do I get that energy that's getting to my arm and make it do what I want? Can I get it to throw my arm into position rather than it just flopping around? Can I allow my arm to move with the energy, but just gently mold it into shape to where I want it to be? Okay. Have a play around with that, see how you get on, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.